241. Not to take security from a widow, as Deuteronomy 24:17 states. Do not take a widow's garment as security. 242. Not to take utensils used in the preparation of food, as Deuteronomy 24:6 states. Do not take either the upper or lower millstone as a pledge. 243. Not to kidnap a Jewish person, as Exodus 20:15 states. Do not steal. This refers to kidnapping. 244. Not to steal, as Leviticus 19:11 states. Do not steal. This refers to stealing money. 245. Not to rob, as Leviticus 19:13 states. Do not rob. 246. Not to alter land boundaries, as Deuteronomy 19:14 states. Do not remove your neighbor's landmark. 247. Not to wrong a colleague by withholding his due, as Leviticus 19:13 states. Do not wrong your neighbor. 248. Not to deny a just claim, as Leviticus 19:11 states. Do not deny your neighbor's claim. 249. Not to swear falsely in denying a monetary obligation to a colleague, as Leviticus opsit states. Do not swear falsely, i.e. do not swear falsely about money owed to a colleague. 250. Not to cheat in business, as Leviticus 25:14 states. One man should not cheat his brother. 251. Not to hurt someone with words, as Leviticus 25:17 states. And one man shall not wrong another. This prohibition refers to hurting someone with words. 252. Not to hurt a convert with words, as Exodus 22:20 states. And do not wrong a convert. 253. Not to cheat a convert in business, as Exodus opsit continues. Nor oppress him. 254. Not to return a slave who fled to Eretz Yisrael to his master who lives in the diaspora, as Deuteronomy 23:16 states. Do not deliver a servant to his master. 255. Not to wrong such a servant, as Deuteronomy 23:17 states. He shall dwell in your midst, in the place which he selects, as he sees fit. Do not wrong him. 256. Not to oppress any widow or orphan, as Exodus 22:21 states. Do not oppress any widow or orphan. 257. Not to have a Hebrew servant perform servile tasks, as Leviticus 25:39 states. Do not work him like a slave. 258. Not to sell a Hebrew servant as slaves are sold, as Leviticus 25:42 states. Do not sell him as slaves are sold. 259. Not to make a Hebrew servant perform rigorous work, as Leviticus 25:43 states. Do not rule over him with rigor. 260. Not to allow a Gentile who purchased a Hebrew servant to make him work rigorously, as Leviticus 25:53 states. He shall not rule over him with rigor. 261. Not to sell a Hebrew maidservant to another person, as Exodus 21:8 states. He shall have no power to sell her. 262. Not to withhold from a Hebrew maidservant who has been designated as a bride living expenses, clothing, or conjugal rights, as Exodus 21:10 states. He may not diminish her living expenses, clothing, or conjugal rights. The above applies also to other wives. 263. Not to sell a Yafat Torah as a maidservant, as Deuteronomy 21:14 states. Do not sell her. 264. Not to force a Yafat Torah to serve as a maidservant, as Deuteronomy opsit continues. Do not rule over her. 265. Not to covet, as Exodus 20:14 states. Do not be envious of your neighbor's wife. 266. Not to desire, as Deuteronomy 5:18 states. Do not desire your neighbor's house. 267. For a worker who is harvesting crops not to eat from the unpicked produce before he has finished work, as Deuteronomy 23:26 states. Do not lift a sickle. 268. For a worker not to take more than what he eats from the produce he harvests, as Deuteronomy 23:25 states. Do not put any into your receptacles. 269. Not to ignore a lost object, as Deuteronomy 22:3 states. You may not ignore it. 270. Not to leave an animal fallen under its load on the road, as Deuteronomy 22:4 states. You may not watch your neighbor's donkey. 271. Not to falsify measurements, as Leviticus 19:35 states. Do not act deceitfully in judgment. According to the oral tradition, we have learned that this verse prohibits acting deceitfully regarding measurements. 272. Not to possess two sets of weights and measures, as Deuteronomy 25:13 states. You may not have in your home. 273. Not to act deceitfully in judgment, as Leviticus 19:15 states. Do not pervert justice. 274. Not to accept bribes, as Exodus 23:8 states. Do not take a bribe. 275. Not to honor a man of stature in judgment, as Leviticus 19:15 states. Do not show respect to a great man. 276. For a judge not to fear rendering a just judgment because of a wicked man, as Deuteronomy 1:17 states. Do not fear anyone. 277. Not to have mercy on a poor person in judgment, as Exodus 23:3 states, and do not favor a poor man in his cause. 278. Not to pervert judgment against a sinner, as implied by Exodus 23:6, which states, do not pervert the judgment of a poor person. This refers to someone who is poor with regard to the observance of the mitzvot. 279. Not to have pity on a person who has caused damages and judgments concerning fines, as Deuteronomy 25:12 states, let your eye not pity. 280. Not to pervert the justice due converts or orphans, as Deuteronomy 24:17 states. To not pervert the judgment of a convert or an orphan. 281. Not to listen to one litigant in the absence of the other, as Exodus 23:1 states. Do not hear a false report. 282. Not to render a conviction in a capital case when there's only a majority of one, as Exodus 23:2 states. Do not follow the majority to do evil. 283. For a person who argued in favor of acquittal in a capital case, not to argue for a conviction, as Exodus opposite states. Do not speak up in a trial to influence. 284. Not to appoint as a judge a man who is unlearned in the Torah, even if he is learned in other disciplines, as Deuteronomy 1:17 states. Do not show favoritism regarding judgment. 285. Not to give false testimony, as Exodus 20:13 states. Do not give false testimony against your neighbor. 286. For a sinner not to act as a witness, as Exodus 23:1 states. Do not conspire with a wicked person to be a corrupt witness. For a relative not to act as a witness, as Deuteronomy 24:16 states. Fathers shall not die because of children. According to the oral tradition, we have learned that the verse teaches that fathers should not die through the testimony of their sons. The same law applies regarding other relatives. 288. Not to render a decision based on the testimony of a single witness, as Deuteronomy 19:15 states. A single witness shall not rise up against a person. 289. Not to kill an innocent person, as Exodus 20:13 states. Do not murder. 290. Not to render a decision on the basis of a presumption unless two witnesses observe the actual matter, as Exodus 23:7 states. Do not slay the innocent and the righteous. 291. For a witness not to render a decision in a capital case in which he testified, as Numbers 35:30 states, one witness shall not testify in a capital case. 292. Not to execute a person liable for execution before he stands trial, as Numbers 35:12 states. The murderer shall not die until he stands before the congregation. 293. Not to have pity on a pursuer. Rather, he should be killed before he kills or rapes the person he is pursuing, as Deuteronomy 25:12 states, and you shall cut off her hand. Show no pity. 294. Not to punish a person forced to commit a sin, as Deuteronomy 22:26 states. Do not do anything to the maiden. 295. Not to take a ransom from a murderer, As Numbers 35:32 states, do not take a ransom for the life of a murderer. 296. Not to take a ransom in return for exile for a person who kills accidentally, as Numbers 35:32 states. And do not take a ransom for having to flee to his refuge city. 297. Not to neglect a person in mortal danger, as Leviticus 19:16 states, do not stand still in the face of mortal danger. 298. Not to leave obstacles, as Deuteronomy 22:8 states, lest you bring blood upon your house. 299. Not to mislead an unsuspecting person, as Leviticus 19:14 states, do not place a stumbling block before the blind. 300. Not to add lashes when whipping a person liable for such punishment, as Deuteronomy 25:3 states, do not add lashes, lest by giving him this additional punishment. 301. Not to gossip, as Leviticus 19:16 states, do not go around as a gossiper among your people. 302. Not to bear hatred in one's heart, as Leviticus 19:17 states, do not hate your brother in your heart. 303. Not to embarrass any Jewish person, as Leviticus opposite states, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor, and not bear a sin because of him. 304. Not to take revenge, as Leviticus 19:18 states, do not take revenge. 305. Not to bear a grudge, as Leviticus opposite states, do not bear a grudge. 306. Not to take a mother bird together with the young, as Deuteronomy 22:6 states, do not take the mother bird together with the young. 307. Not to shave the hair around a bald spot brought about by tzara'at, as Leviticus 13:33 states, and he shall not shave the bald spot. 308. Not to remove the signs of tzara'at, as Deuteronomy 24:8 states, be very careful concerning signs of tzara'at. 309. Not to till or sow the land around a powerful river, at which atonement was made for an unsolved murder, as Deuteronomy 21:4 states, that which must never be tilled and never be sown. 310. For a groom not to be held liable for any type of public service, for example, army guarding the walls of a city, and the like, as Deuteronomy 24:5 states, he shall not go out to the army, nor be charged with any duties. 311. Not to allow a sorcerer to live, as Exodus 22:17 states, do not allow a witch to live. 312. Not to reject the authority of the court, as Deuteronomy 17:11 states, do not swerve from the word which they tell you. 313. Not to add to the mitzvot of the Torah. This applies both to the written law and to its explanation conveyed by the oral tradition, as Deuteronomy 13:1 states, carefully observe everything which I command you to do not add to it. 314. Not to diminish from any of the mitzvot of the Torah, as Deuteronomy opposite continues, and do not diminish from it. 315. Not to curse a judge, as Exodus 22:27 states, do not curse judges. 316. Not to curse a nasi, i.e. the king or the head of the academy in Eretz Yisrael, as Exodus opposite continues. And do not curse the nasi of your people. 317. Not to curse any other Jew, as Leviticus 19:14 states, do not curse even a deaf mute. 318. Not to curse one's father or mother, as Exodus 21:17 states, one who curses his father or mother shall surely die. 319. Not to strike one's father or mother, as Exodus 21:15 states, one who strikes his father or mother shall surely die. 320. Not to work on the Sabbath, as Exodus 20:10 states, do not do any work. 321. Not to travel beyond the boundaries of a city on the Sabbath, as travelers do, as Exodus 16:29 states, a person should not leave his place on the Sabbath day. 322. For a court not to inflict punishment on the Sabbath, as Exodus 35:3 states, do not kindle a fire on the Sabbath day. 323. Not to work on the first day of Pesach, as Leviticus 23:7 states concerning it, do not do any servile work on these days. 324. not to work on the seventh day of Pesach, as Leviticus 23:8 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work on these days. 325. Not to work on the holiday of Shavuot, as Leviticus 23:21 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 326. Not to work on the first day of the seventh month, the day of Rosh Hashanah, as Leviticus 23:25 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 327. Not to work on Yom Kippur, as Leviticus 23:28 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 328. Not to work on the first day of the festival of Sukkot, as Leviticus 23:35 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 329. Not to work on the eighth day of the festival of Sukkot, as Leviticus 23:36 states concerning it. Do not do any servile work. 330. Not to have intimate relations with one's mother, as Leviticus 18:7 states. She is your mother. Do not commit incest with her. 331. Not to have intimate relations with one's sister, as Leviticus 18:9 states. Do not commit incest with your sister, your father's daughter. 332. Not to have intimate relations with one's father's wife, as Leviticus 18:8 states. Do not commit incest with your father's wife. 333. Not to have intimate relations with a sister, the daughter of either your father or your mother, as Leviticus 18:11 states. She is the daughter of your father's progeny. Do not commit incest with her. 334. Not to have intimate relations with one's son's daughter, as Leviticus 18:10 states. Do not commit incest with your son's daughter. 335. Not to have intimate relations with one's daughter's daughter, as Leviticus, opposite continues, quote, and do not commit incest with your daughter's daughter. 336. Not to have intimate relations with one's daughter. Why was this prohibition not explicitly stated in the Torah? Since the Torah forbade intimate relations with one's daughter's daughter, it did not mention the prohibition against intimate relations with one's daughter. Nevertheless, according to the oral tradition, the prohibition against relations with one's daughter has the status of a Torah law, like the other sexual offenses, and is not considered as rabbinic in origin. 1337. Not to have intimate relations with a woman and her daughter, as Leviticus 18:17 states. Do not commit incest by marrying a woman and her daughter. 338. Not to have intimate relations with a woman and her son's daughter, as Leviticus, opposite, continues, her son's daughter. 339. Not to have intimate relations with a woman and her daughter's daughter, as Leviticus, opposite, continues, amon starquo, her daughter's daughter, you shall not take. 340. Not to have intimate relations with one's father's sister, as Leviticus 18:12 states. Do not commit incest with your father's sister. 341. Not to have intimate relations with one's mother's sister, as Leviticus 18:13 states. Do not commit incest with your mother's sister. 342. Not to have intimate relations with the wife of one's father's brother, as Leviticus 18:14 states. Do not commit incest with his wife. She is your aunt. 343. Not to have intimate relations with one's son's wife, as Leviticus 18:15 states. Do not commit incest with your daughter-in-law. 344. Not to have intimate relations with one's brother's wife, as Leviticus 18:16 states. Do not commit incest with your brother's wife. 345. Not to have intimate relations with one's wife's sister, as Leviticus 18:18 states. Do not take a woman as a wife together with her sister. 346. Not to have intimate relations with a woman in the nida state, as Leviticus 18:19 states. Do not come close to a woman in the nida state of impurity. 347. Not to have intimate relations with a married woman, as Leviticus 18:20 states. Do not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife. 348. Not to perform a sexual act with an animal, as Leviticus 18:23 states, and do not lie carnally with any animal. 349, for a woman not to perform a sexual act with an animal, as Leviticus 18:23 continues, quote, and a woman should not present herself to an animal for sexual purposes. 350, not to commit sodomy, as Leviticus 18:22 states, and do not lie with a male. 351, not to commit sodomy with one's father, as Leviticus 18:7 states, do not commit a sexual offense with your father. 352, not to commit sodomy with one's father's brother, as Leviticus 18:14 states, do not commit a sexual offense with your father's brother. 353, not to be intimate with a woman with whom sexual relations are forbidden in matters that might lead to intercourse, e.g. embracing, kissing, winks, or signs, as Leviticus 18:6 states, no person shall approach a close relative to commit a sexual offense. Based on the oral tradition, we have learned that this prohibits intimacy that might lead to sexual relations. 354, for a mamzer not to marry a natural-born Jewess, as Deuteronomy 23:31 states, a mamzer may not enter God's congregation. 355, for there not to be a kadesha, i.e. a woman who engages in intimate relations without a marriage contract and a marriage ceremony among the Jewish people, as Deuteronomy 23:18 states, there shall not be a kadesha. 356, for a man who is divorced not to remarry his divorcee after she marries anyone else, as Deuteronomy 24:4 states, her first husband who divorced her may not take her as a wife again. 357, for a Yevamah not to marry anyone other than her Yavam, as Deuteronomy 25:5 states, the wife of the deceased shall not. 358, for a rapist not to divorce the woman he raped, as Deuteronomy 22:29 states, he may not send her away for his entire life. 359, for a person who defamed his wife's character not to divorce her, as Deuteronomy 22:19 states, he may not send her away for his entire life. 360, for a man incapable of procreation not to marry a natural-born Jewess, as Deuteronomy 23:2 states, a man with crushed testicles may not enter God's congregation. 361, not to castrate a male from any species, neither a human, a domestic animal, a wild beast, nor a bird, as Leviticus 22:24 states, you shall not do this in your land. 362, not to appoint a convert to a position of authority over the Jewish people, as Deuteronomy 17:15 states, you may not appoint a foreigner over you. 363, for a king not to accumulate many horses, as Deuteronomy 17:16 states, and he may not accumulate many horses. 364, for a king not to accumulate many wives, as Deuteronomy 17:17 states, and he may not accumulate many wives. 365, for a king not to accumulate much silver and gold, as Deuteronomy opsit continues, and he may not accumulate very much silver and gold. These 613 mitzvot were given to Moses on Mount Sinai, together with their general principles, particular points, and details. These general principles, particular points, and details represent the oral law which each court received from the previous court. There are also other commandments that were instituted after the giving of the Torah. They were established by the prophets and sages and disseminated throughout Israel. For example, the reading of the Megillah, lighting a Hanukkah lamp, fasting on Tisha B'Av, setting up Eruvim, and washing one's hands in preparation for prayer and eating. Each of these commandments also possesses explanatory aspects and details. All of this will be explained in this text. We are obligated to accept and observe all these commandments which the rabbis instituted as implied by Deuteronomy 17:11. Do not deviate from the instructions that they will give you left or right. They are not considered to be additions to the commandments of the Torah. If so, what was the intention of the Torah's warning, Deuteronomy 13:11, do not add to it and do not detract from it, that a prophet is not permitted to introduce a new measure and say that the Holy One, blessed be he, commanded this mitzvah to us, and that it should be added to the Torah's mitzvot, or say that he commanded that we eliminate one of the 613 mitzvot mentioned above. However, if a court, together with the prophet of that age, adds a commandment as an ordinance, a lesson, or as a decree, this is not considered as an addition. He is not saying that the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded us to make an eruv or read the Megillah at its appointed time. Were he to say so, he would be adding to the Torah. Instead, we are saying that the prophets and the courts ordained and commanded that the Megillah be read at its appointed time in order to recall the praise of the Holy One, blessed be He, the salvation He wrought for us, and His response to our cries, so that we will bless Him, extol Him, and inform the future generations of the truth of the Torah's promise. Deuteronomy 4:7. What nation is so great that it has God close to it? Similar principles apply with regard to all the other rabbinic commandments, be they positive commandments or negative commandments.